Vanessa, let's move on to Gaza then. And well, the Financial Times had an article recently which gave the tip off that Tony Blair, in fact, was involved in certain decision making around Gaza. Give us the details.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to talk more about it in extra, but I've taken out some of the most pertinent points. So, this was an article in the Financial Times, which has been picked up by many people and distributed across social media. Tony Blair's staff, so that's the Tony Blair Global Institute, took part in the Gaza Riviera project. Now, of course, this so-called Riviera project goes way back, and we reported back in May 2024 on a report that was published by Ynet in Hebrew media. That's why this translation is not perfect. Gaza 2035 exposed. This is the utopian, they describe it as, for Palestinians, dystopian vision for the Strip, which is being examined in Netanyahu's office. And then, if you remember the images that we showed from that report on UK Column in May 2024, this was one of the images, what I call the Dubaiization of Gaza, the eradication of Palestinian history and identity, and the replacement of it with these hideous Dubai-style scapes. And then this is one of the slides from the presentation that the Financial Times has exposed, where you can actually see the exact same image. So this is not new information. What's kind of interesting is the Tony Blair Institute and the Boston Consulting Group are trying desperately to distance themselves from the report. They were caught out by being included on 12 people chats, on messaging, and so on. And to a degree, they had to admit that they had presented information for consideration in the final project. And this is basically what it says in the Financial Times. One lengthy document on post-war Gaza written by a TBI staff member was shared within the group for consideration. This included the idea of Gaza Riviera, which of course originated with President Trump, with artificial islands off the coast akin to those in Dubai, blockchain-based trade initiatives, a deep water port to the Gaza intro into the India-Middle East economic corridor, and low-tax special economic zones. The document said the devastating war in Gaza had created a once-in-a-century opportunity to rebuild Gaza from first principles. So a genocide offers once-in-a-century opportunity to basically land grab again in Palestine. Then who was actually involved in this? The group of Israeli businessmen behind the project, including tech investor Liren Tanneman and venture capitalist Michael Eisenberg, who had earlier sketched out and helped set up the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which of course has been run by American private military contractors like Phil Riley, who met with Tony Blair in March in London to discuss the project. And of course, GHF has been responsible for many of the massacres of Palestinians in Gaza, heading to try and secure aid for their starving families. Cue Charles's comment about starvation being used as warfare is, of course, illegal under any kind of humanitarian law conventions. Now, Phil Riley heads up SRS, Safe Reach Solutions. Again, we've pointed this organization out on UK Column. He's a former CIA paramilitary, was one of the first Americans to enter Afghanistan post 9/11. So that gives you some idea of his background. And then I just wanted to show this. So back in May 2024, we reported on this project, which was given then the name of From Crisis to Prosperity, Transformation of Gaza from an Iranian Shrine to a Moderate Axis. And now it's being the Great Trust from a demolished Iranian proxy, so that's wishful thinking on their behalf, to a prosperous Abrahamic ally, of course, harking back to the Abraham Accords, which again were established by President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, under Trump's first administration. And apparently the GREAT stands for Gaza reconstruction, economic acceleration, and transformation. I'm sure that makes you feel a whole lot better. But when we look into the details on the project, let's have a look at this one section. It envisaged all Gaza's public land being put into a trust for development, whose assets could be sold to investors via digital tokens traded on a blockchain. Gazans would be offered the chance to contribute their privately owned land to the trust in return for a token that gave them the right to a permanent housing unit. I mean, this is quite extraordinary. It's absolutely twisted land theft and home theft, yet again, from the Palestinians. So I also wanted to demonstrate how this roadmap to genocide didn't begin with one president or the other. This has been in the works for decades. And this roadmap has been, let's say, each president has played a role. From 2016 to 2020. Trump proposed the Economic Zone Project for Gaza, which was, as I said, he brought in the Abraham Accords. Joe Biden enabled the genocide post-October the 7th, supplying weapons and, of course, apologism for the Zionist genocidaires. March 2024, the Ynet report before US elections. So this is basically before Trump had been elected in November 2024. February 2025, Trump said Gaza should be emptied of Palestinians to make way for the Riviera of the Middle East. And now the FT, the slide deck, was an economic exploration of the ideas brought by President Trump. So clearly Trump was involved in this from day one. So from his first administration in 2016, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see clearly on this map, but you can freeze frame it and zoom in. But basically you see that there is the Elon Musk section. There is huge investment in the reconstruction by the Arab League that has been proposed by Egypt. Of course, Egypt has partnered Israel in the so-called reconstruction of Gaza in the past and must be seen as a partner in the genocide in Gaza. But those others that are involved are Tesla, Amazon, IKEA, the hotel chain IHG. US industry is apparently going to have access to 1.3 trillion rare earth minerals in the Gulf from this free trade zone, which is basically Western Saudi Arabia. And they claim that 25% of Gazans are going to be encouraged to leave. So that is roughly 500,000, 500,000 Gazans are going to be forced out. The others that remain, of course, are going to be expected to live inside very much reduced concentration camps within what is left of the territory inside the Gaza Strip that they can inhabit. And of course, if people want to remind themselves of Blair's role in the region, do you have a read of the Blair Bush project in Syria that brought al-Qaeda to power? But Blair has played a role in the Middle East and in the maintenance of the Sykes-Picot borders and the devastation of the region from the beginning. And of course, Iraq.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. And we just say the Blair Bush Project article is on the UK Column website, so go and read that. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Now,